Okay, so Bubesi Mphathi Mhlaba is back with more, right? So we're going to be discussing about the FA Cup replay that will be taking place between Aston Villa as well as Chelsea at Villa Park, right, on Wednesday evening, the 28th of February. So Chelsea and Aston Villa will actually fight for a finish, in order to progress to the round of 16 of this, season's FA Cup. And what's actually interesting to note is the fact that, between both Chelsea and Aston Villa, the Premier League sides, both of them have claimed, the famous FA Cup trophy 15 times, right? Chelsea have claimed the FA Cup title 8 times, as well as Aston Villa have got 7 to their tally. But unfortunately, however, in this particular encounter, only one will continue in their quest, to add to their respective tallies. You understand? So a replay was actually required after a stalemate at Stamford Bridge. It was a very disappointing stalemate, to say the least, because both teams were very wasteful in front of goal, right? That encounter happened like almost 12 days ago, and that was actually one of 5 draws at this stage of the competition. So a rematch, at like home park between Leeds United and Plymouth saw the former progress, right? And they will travel to the victor of tonight's tie. Basically, whoever wins between Aston Villa as well as Chelsea will actually play against Leeds United. So look, let us get straight into the details of this particular encounter between Chelsea as well as Aston Villa at Villa Park, right? So basically, Chelsea, the first football league club from the capital, to actually reach an FA Cup final, which was back in the 1914-1915 season, is the only London-based side that is actually left in the competition. A fifth round has not been smoke-free since 1901-02 season, right? So that is like way back, over like almost 2 centuries ago, right? And this is actually the 8th time, Chelsea and Aston Villa have been drawn together in the FA Cup. But, winning at the Villains' lair, will actually be a new landmark for Chelsea in the competition. Although, they've only like won several matches at Villa Park when it was, used as a neutral venue. And a week ago against Newcastle United, Unai Emery's side actually suffered their first home defeat in 16 games, but they rallied to trash, Sheffield United in an impressive, emphatic 6-0 victory, over the weekend. Whilst Chelsea have now suffered back-to-back defeats, and Mauricio Pochettino did note that a reaction to the disappointment is actually required, because there will actually be 6,300 traveling fans, urging on the Carabao finalists. And a result that would, as the head coach stated, match the history of the club is actually needed, because Chelsea are in desperate need for the result against, Aston Villa to actually keep their season alive, despite the fact that they also have reached the Carabao Cup. And remember, Chelsea, they've won each of their past 7 FA Cup ties, requiring a replay at any away ground following a draw at Stamford Bridge, right? And another thing is that, this replay was actually necessary because obviously the first meeting at Stamford Bridge ended in a 0-0 draw, and Chelsea were actually superior in the first 45 minutes, and they pressed their opponents Aston Villa into several errors, but chances went begging and the visitors edged the second period, and you look at Aston Villa's aggressive high defensive line. It was like the way out in front of a catching Premier League opponent's offside, with 116, to 41, more than the next highest, you understand? And it might be interesting to also note the fact that, Cole Palmer, Raheem Sterling, as well as Noni Madueke, slipped past them at the bridge, leading to 4 shots on target, to Aston Villa's 1 before the break, right? And Villa's extra 10 days of recovery, it told in the second half, as Georgi Petrovic, had to be at his best against 6 attempts from set pieces in that particular encounter at Stamford Bridge. And with 8 goals conceded in the last 2 games, Chelsea, head coach Pochettino, he may feel that it's time for a tactical change. You understand? And he actually be in a scenario where he's actually forced to actually dispense with the false 9 used at the bridge against Villa. Perhaps Nico Jackson could return to lead the front line shortly after returning from the African Cup of Nations duty. And also Kani Chukwuemeka, will almost certainly be pushing for a start against his former side, while Palmer will hope to maintain, his strong goal-scoring form if selected. And another player that they could actually utilize is the fact that Trevor Chalobah, he continues to build his fitness, at Cobham after several months out. But Levi Colwill will not be expected to feature as he continues to recover from his minor injury, right? So, basically, we hope to see a result from the Blues, right? But it's not going to be an easy encounter against Aston Villa, because remember, you look at the history between both of these sides in this particular competition. Remember, both of these sides have actually met 12 times in the FA Cup, right? Chelsea, the first meeting between these two sides came in 1920, which resulted in a 3-1 victory for Aston Villa, right? So the last time both of these sides actually met once again, which before that game, that goalless stalemate at Stamford Bridge, was in 2010, when they actually met in the semi-final clash at Wembley. Chelsea emerged as 3-0 victors on that day, right? And they also did defeat Aston Villa 1-0 in the final, in the 2000 FA Cup final, 1-0 at Wembley Stadium. So basically, it is perhaps the fact that Aston Villa have won more games, surprisingly, in the FA Cup against Chelsea, because Aston Villa have won 5 times against Chelsea, and Chelsea have only won 3 times against Aston Villa. So there's only been 2 draws between both of these sides. And, hopefully, my prediction is the fact that Chelsea will win this game narrowly. It will be a 2-1 victory away from home for the Londoners. And what can we say, man? On the side of Aston Villa, Emery's experienced pragmatists, have had mixed fortunes, since, they actually met, losing 3-1 at home to Newcastle before actually trashing Sheffield United away. And against the Blaze, Villa raced into a 3-goal lead with direct counter-attacks that showcased the quality and athleticism of their front four. When Newcastle United actually visited Villa Park, though, the Magpies exposed, possible weaknesses, as 2 of their goals came from a centre-back unmarked at set plays. And the visitors also, stifled the supply to Moussa Diaby as well as Oli Watkins until the introduction of informed winger Leon Bailey. So those are perhaps one of the weaknesses that the Blues, the Londoners, Chelsea could actually exploit in order for them to actually progress to the round of 16, of this year's FA Cup, competition, right? And for the fact that, yes, Chelsea haven't had the best of seasons, but Chelsea is still a big club. A lot is still expected of them, because as we saw at the Bridge, Villa, they are able to work the ball rapidly from front to back. Through Emi Martinez's rocket launches or Douglas's Luiz, long passes to Watkins, because they actually prove to be effective most of the time, as well as constructed corners as well as free kicks, and illness-forced influential midfielder Douglas Luiz off on Saturday, but he is expected to be fit in the clash against Chelsea, and Emery's team is, however, without set play specialist Lucas Digne, as well as John Duran and key defender Ezri Konsa. Pau Torres may make the bench, but January signing Morgan Rogers, who scored, Middlesbrough's consolation in the Carabao Cup semi-final win, for Chelsea, is actually he cannot play. He cannot partake, because remember, he has already played for Middlesbrough, so he cannot partake for Aston Villa in this competition. So should this game actually finish level after 90 minutes again, plus stoppages, and as well as 30 minutes of extra time will be played, and if the contest remains deadlocked, the tie will actually be decided by penalty kicks. And Pochettino's side have won, only one penalty shootout this season, which was a 4-2 victory against Newcastle in, December's Carabao quarterfinal clash, right? So there's a lot of expectations, from Chelsea as well, and there's a lot of expectations from Villa, considering the fact that Aston Villa, the home side, have been on sublime form this season. Another thing is the fact that, look, 5 substitutions as well as, concussion replacements are allowed in, the world's oldest football knockout competition. And the VAR will be in operation where Premier League clubs are the hosts, so such as this one. And, accumulating 2 yellow cards results in a 1-match suspension in the FA Cup. So only red cards are transferable to other domestic competitions. So all cautions are cleared, after the quarterfinals, and Thiago Silva is currently the only Chelsea player cautioned in this season's campaign, right? And should the Blues actually make it to the next round, the match will be played at Stamford Bridge, on Wednesday, 28 February. You understand? And yeah, the quarterfinals are planned, for the 16th, as well as which are planned to take place on the 16th and the 17th of March. And the semifinals are planned to actually be scheduled on the 20th to the 21st of April 2024. And the final is set for Saturday, the 25th of May 2024 at Wembley Stadium. So the winners of the final, they obviously earn a place to partake in the Europa League, UEFA Europa League next season in the 2024-2025 season. So again, yeah, let's just keep on going. Because it is going to be an interesting encounter between Aston Villa as well as Chelsea at Villa Park. And, one thing that is actually interesting, if you look at Chelsea's FA Cup replay history, is that Chelsea have progressed from 8 of their previous 9 away replays after a home draw in the FA Cup. And the most recent example was against Birmingham City in 2012, where the Blues, drew the original fixture 1-1 under Andre Villas-Boas, and he was led by his replacement, Roberto Di Matteo, who won the midweek replay at St. James's Park 2-0, right? Not St. James's Park, I meant to say Birmingham City's home ground, just not so far away from Villa Park, right? Not so far away from Villa Park, just close. It's just like a walking distance. So Birmingham City's home ground is obviously St. Andrews, right? Not so far away from Villa Park. Chelsea were victorious on that day via 2-0, thanks to second half goals by Juan Mata as well as Raul Meireles. And the last time Chelsea required a rematch of any sort in this competition was in 2018, when extra time and penalties at Stamford Bridge eventually saw off Norwich City. And another thing is that there's been one previous replay played between, both sides, right? That was back in 1987, the first game at Villa Park